chance to do one thing that every team in the country can't do. We got a chance to step up, man. We got a chance to step on the ledge, you know what I mean? And to me, I think it's a free fall. To be elite, you got to think it's free fall. That means you can't be afraid to go to the edge. And coach said, jump. He said, how far, coach? Where you want me to go? Every guy got a chance to do that today. If you're elite, grab somebody today. Take him with you. There's no more average in this program. There's no more average in this program.
Year one with Mike Elko at the helm at Texas A&M after being a much congratulated and wanted coordinator at Texas A&M in a prior stint. Hi, everybody. I am Colin Bashnigal, your host here at Bash's College Football Show. You can find me on TikTok, Bash's CFB Show, which is going to be linked down in the description, along with my X handle and also my Twitch account for you to come into these live streams and see me do this live. Today, we're talking about the Texas A&M Aggies by request and an interesting team for sure. Where do they fit in with the modern SEC? How difficult their schedule is? That's going to be something that we're going to have a lot of conversation about in this video. We obviously want to start off with talking about the roster movement, and you got to talk about the staff too. Like Mike Elko coming in, he's bringing in Jay Bateman at defense for the defense coordinator help for him, because obviously this is going to be a Mike Elko defense. But then also you're going to have Colin Klein on the offensive side of the ball, taking him from Kansas State, in which he had been a pretty good play caller for the Wildcats the last couple of years and a Wildcat legend there. So for him to go away, that money must have talked for Colin Klein, that's for sure. Now you got to talk about some of the players leaving off to different schools or off to the next level or ventures past college football. And that would start with wide receiver Aniyah Smith leaving and going off to the next level. Layden Robinson is an interior offensive lineman that they're going to have to figure out how to replace. And on defense, they lost 3 impactful defensive players and defensive lineman McKinley Jackson. Then they lost the linebacker Edgerrin Cooper and safety, longtime starting safety Damani Richardson, off to the next level. In the transfer portal, they did lose a little bit. The key transfers that they had lost, you start with Max Johnson, who after Connor Weigman got hurt, started a good bit last year and started Weigman's freshman year before Weigman ended up getting his number called. Wide receiver Evan Stewart going off to Oregon. That is a big-time talent that had a down year after having a pretty solid freshman year. Definitely didn't produce as well last year. Jake Johnson, the tight end, he was their starting tight end last year. He's off to North Carolina following his brother Max. And then offensive tackle Nyquil Bertrand going off to Alabama, a talented kid. I'm not sure if Nyquil Bertrand is like a starting caliber player at either place, but I think he's definitely a good depth piece and a good developmental prospect. 2 defensive linemen leaving. These were pretty big, probably the biggest departures on the defensive side of the ball. And Walter Nolan being the big one that went to Ole Miss and a huge addition for Lane Kiffin in that defense. And LT Overton as well going to Alabama, a talented kid who's probably going to get some good run and good playing time over at Alabama. Tony Grimes, a cornerback that transferred in, hoping for a little bit of love there, a talented kid. He's going off to UNLV. I just thought that's notable because if you follow recruiting, you know who Tony Grimes is. And then Jordan Gilbert is going out to LSU, the safety. So those are the key departures that you got to talk about with this 7-6 squad from a year ago that definitely underperformed yet again compared to what their talent composite ranking would show and what their actual talent was. Again, in 2022, they went 5-7 as well, definitely underperforming in comparison to what they had as far as talent goes, at least on paper. So what do they bring back exactly, and what is Mike Elko going to deal with? Well, he's probably going to deal with still the most talented roster he has been the head coach of, which obviously he was at Duke for 2 years, and he got 9 wins his first year at Duke, had a good season that tapered off towards the end last year as well. And you're going to start with a solid quarterback who his health is going to be really the big question. And it's not about keeping him healthy. It's just hoping that he doesn't have bad luck again, because last year he got hurt, but he hadn't had necessarily a huge history of injury in the past. He is a talented kid, though, and I'm curious to see what Colin Klein is able to do with him. Connor Weigman is who I'm talking about, the quarterback. He's definitely going to start for these guys. 2 running backs back, Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels. two really, really good players at running back ready to tote that rock. And though they lost Evan Stewart in the transfer portal, they have three really good wide receivers coming back in Jade Walker. Then you have Moose Muhammad and you have Noah Thomas. Those three are going to be great players for this offense this upcoming season. Get a couple of offensive linemen back, Chase Basantis, Trey Zune. Chase Basantis as a freshman was absolutely a stud, and Trey Zune, an experienced guy, and then Cam Dewberry on the interior as well coming back. On the defensive side of the ball, they're going to have a lot to replace, but we'll talk about what they addressed in the transfer portal as they bring back Shamar Turner on the defensive line. They bring back Tarian York from the linebacker position, and Tyreek Chappelle, pardon me. I said Chapel. I think it's Chappelle. Tyreek Chappelle back, one of their top corners from a year ago. Now you get the guys transferring in, and there's a lot of depth of this, like running back E.J. Smith, Emmitt Smith's son, I believe, right? Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but he comes in from Stanford. Cyrus Allen comes in from Louisiana Tech to help with that wide receiver depth, as well as Jabare Barber coming in from Troy. Then you get a good handful of tight ends, Trey Watson coming in from Washington, and then you get Garrett Miller from Purdue and East Carolina's Shane Calhoun, all adding depth to the tight end position. That's definitely going to have a little bit of question to it. On the offensive line, they added a couple of really good players, including one that is probably going to start in Armaj Reed Adams from Kansas. And then they get a couple of other players, Dorian Hinton coming in from FAU and Kalanu Feau from Utah. If I butchered that name, I apologize, but those are the guys coming in. Their biggest add in the transfer portal to me that might be under the radar a little bit, Nick Scorton coming in from Purdue, an absolute stud edge rusher. They also added Rodis Johnson, a defensive lineman from Wisconsin. Josh Seliskar from UCF comes in as an edge rusher to help with the depth. Then they're going to get a guy starting at linebacker for them, and Scooby Williams coming in from Florida. That's also a big add, too, that they had. And a couple of talented kids. One's Des Ricks, who's more of a developmental kid from Alabama that is still trying to learn how to play college football at a high level. But Will Lee might be a guy that plays a good bit coming in from Kansas State. So overall, when you look at this roster makeup, they do have some holes, some depth issues maybe, but for the most part, like this is a very complete roster, probably the most complete roster that Mike Elko has seen in a very long time, even when you go back to him as a defensive coordinator at Texas A&M. And you got to think that Mike Elko's defense, just like it was at Duke the last 2 years, it's going to be pretty solid. So with that being said, we're going to get straight into the schedule predictions for the Texas A&M Aggies. And I'm going to tell you this right now. I am high enough on the Aggies to pick them to go and win against Notre Dame in week 1. They're at home. I think people are a little bit too bold on Notre Dame and how successful they're going to be. I think that that's a big game for Notre Dame, though. Don't get it twisted. But I think going on the road to Kyle Field and playing at Texas A&M and College Station is going to be a very tough place to play. You got to prove that Riley Leonard is, number one, 100% ready to go, and number two, that he can throw the ball against an SEC defense. And you got to show that your wide receiver core is also where it is. I like what they did in the portal. I like some of the moves that they made for that wide receiver room. Is it going to be good enough to win on the road at Texas A&M? I personally don't think so. So I'm picking Texas A&M to beat Notre Dame and beat McNeese State, but I think they get upset against Florida at the Swamp. A lot of people are going to be low on Florida, and I think this is going to be a reason why people are going to get higher on Florida early in the season, kind of like they have the last couple of years. Florida's got talent. They just don't have a whole lot of depth. I personally am a Billy Napier defender, and I'll talk more about it when we get to Florida, but I think that Florida wins this game and pulls off a massive upset, even if they don't have the most successful season overall. Then you get an easy rebound game with Bowling Green before playing your rivalry game against Arkansas. I already did a preview on them. I don't think Arkansas is going to be that good of a team at all. I think they're going to really, really struggle, and I think specifically on offense, they're really going to struggle, and that defense is nothing to write home about either. So I think that this will be a win for Texas A&M in Arlington, but I do think they come back home, and I think they lose to Missouri. I think Missouri is probably a better team, and that schedule setup, I like Missouri going into that game. Also, Missouri's schedule is just a little bit weaker too, and if Missouri is a better team, I could see Texas A&M falling short in that game. But coming off that loss, you have a bye to really sit on it and learn your lessons from that film. And I think they beat Mississippi State on the road off of a bye. Then I think they beat LSU at home. I think that they've had LSU's number for the most part the last couple of years, being able to compete with them, even when they lost last year in Death Valley. I thought that that was a good game and a much better game than what people have really expected it to be. And speaking of having teams' numbers, I think they have South Carolina's number as well. I think that both of these defenses are going to struggle to stop Texas A&M, and I think Texas A&M's offense with those wide receivers and those running backs is going to start taking a rhythm that Colin Klein is going to absolutely love to have the challenge of being able to scheme with this amount of talent. And I think that Texas A&M, they're going to be a dangerous team here as we enter November. They come off of the bye, and I think that they beat New Mexico State pretty easy, and they're going to go on the road, have a tough place to play against an Auburn team who I think is going to be a lot better than what people give them credit for. The SEC is so dang deep, and this is going to be insane, but it coming off of a bye, then New Mexico State, they're gearing up for that road game against Auburn. The only thing I worry about is that this is going to be a look-ahead spot to the reunion of the rivalry game between Texas and Texas A&M. But I think that Texas A&M is a good enough team that they can go on the road to Jordan-Hare, and they're going to be looking forward to the Alabama game themselves. I think that Texas A&M gets the win on the road before returning back home and losing a tight one, a very good one, to Texas. So overall, what you have right there is a 9-2 football team with maybe even a chance, an outside shot at making an SEC championship, playing against the Texas team that I haven't previewed, but everybody knows that Texas is going to be one of the favorites in the SEC to go and be a contender for that SEC championship and be a team that could possibly make the college football playoff. But with Texas A&M losing that game 9-3, 5-3 in conference, is that still going to be successful enough? Will they get enough big wins, specifically that out-of-conference win against Notre Dame? Will that be enough to vault them into the college football playoff? I have no idea, personally. I think that if you're a 9-3 SEC team, you could be right on the cusp of it. But the thing about this Texas A&M schedule is, yeah, they have that out-of-conference win against Notre Dame potentially, but I think that there's really only a handful of big games. And for the most part, I have them losing the bigger games on their schedule and getting upset against a Florida team who's not expected to do much in the SEC. So I think right now it's going to come down to, if they lose to either Auburn, though I don't think Auburn's going to be bad, either Auburn or Florida on the road, if they get tripped up in one of those road games, or even Mississippi State on the road, if they don't beat LSU, if they lose one of these games, I think they're toast. I think 8-4 is probably a solid prediction, and missing the playoff because of bad loss. So, but obviously I don't know how this has worked out because I haven't looked at where I'm going to be lining up all these teams and putting them in a ranking. But based on resume, to put their chances here, if my prediction on Texas A&M is correct, I doubt that they make the 12-team playoff. All right, everybody. Thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And make sure you like, subscribe, and comment down below what you think Texas A&M is going to do, and if there's a team I should do next. But with that being said, thank you guys for tuning in, and have yourselves a good rest of your day.